What happens when daytime TV's friendliest round table becomes a gladiator arena? It was supposed to be a tidy double segment on The View, 2 oversized personalities, 1 oversized table, and 4 seasoned hosts keeping the conversation civilized. But civility has a short fuse when pride pasts and public myths collide. Johnny Depp arrived with old Hollywood calm in a drawer full of rings. Prince Harry came with modern royal gravity and a jaw set like a locked door. Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg opened with warm laughter. Mugs clinked. The audience settled in, and then one casually barbed interjection cut through the air and turned a talk show into a duel. The studio looked like a postcard from daytime comfort. Butter yellow lights, glossy desk, pastel backdrops that suggested calm seas and good manners. The audience clapped in polite waves as the cameras glided. Joy Behar leaned forward, her reading glasses dangling at the end of a bright chain. Whoopi Goldberg, impossibly unflappable, sat in her usual spot, hands wrapped around a white mug like a conductor crouched before the first note. "Okay, America," Joy said, drawing out the syllables like ribbon. "We have a treat. 2 men who know a thing or two about headlines." She glanced left, then right, mischievous. "Please welcome Johnny Depp and Prince Harry." Applause, full, appreciative, curious. Johnny gave a small nod that half-smile audiences think is for them and insiders know is for nobody. Dark suit, a charcoal scarf looping twice, rings that caught and tossed the light back like small comets. Harry's suit was navy, sharp tie, a shade that couldn't decide if it was serious or simply shy. He did the British half-wave, small as a secret, and sat straight-backed, knees polite. Whoopi started easy. "Gentlemen, welcome." "I feel under-accessorized," she told Johnny, pointing at the rings. Laughter, a good omen. Johnny lifted a hand. "It's mostly habit," he said, voice low and sanded. "And a little superstition." "Superstition plays big at this table," Sunny host added, smiling. Sarah Haynes leaned over to adjust a card, the choreography of 100 broadcasts humming beneath the surface. Joy lobbed the opening underhand. "Johnny, you've been in this business longer than some of our viewers have been alive. When you show up on a set now, does it feel different than it did 20 years ago?" He turned the idea over with his eyes before speaking. "You learn to listen more than you talk," he said. "And when you do talk, you try to make sure the words didn't show up dressed in yesterday's clothes." A murmur of appreciation. He had that way of sounding both wise and a little amused at himself. Before Whoopi could bridge to Harry, Sunny dipped in gently. "And does that listening extend to public narratives? Yours has been, let's say, noisy." Johnny's mouth twitched. "The volume knob's never been mine to control," he said. "Just the melody." Harry looked sideways. "Just a flick." Joy clocked it. Host instincts with a radar for static. She swung to Harry. "And you, sir, you've talked a lot about narratives, too. What's the melody for you now?" Harry placed his hands. "Service," V said. "Mental health advocacy, veterans' well-being, trying to use a spotlight for people who don't get one." "Not a bad melody," Whoopi said, settling him with a nod. "It plays." So, Joy continued, cheerful traffic cop. 2 men familiar with misinterpretation. Different lanes, same highway. "Do you ever watch each other's stories and think they're, but for the grace of editors?" Johnny gave a small laugh. "I try not to gawk at car crashes," he said. "Even ones I've been in." Harry's smile was tight, his gaze fixed on the mug in front of him. Sarah caught the micro-tension and pivoted to craft. "Johnny, you talk about listening. When you take a role now, what's the first thing you ask?" Johnny folded a ringed hand into the other, thoughtful. "What's the heartbeat? If I can't hear it, I can't play it. And if the heartbeat is vanity, I'm deaf." It was clean practice, but true. Joy opened her mouth to toss him a follow-up, and that's when the spark jumped. "A convenient philosophy," Harry said almost lightly without looking at him. "When you don't take responsibility for the noise, the audience made that small animal sound people make when the energy shifts, a collective." Joy's eyes flashed surprise, the kind that says we did not rehearse this beat. Johnny blinked, not quickly. "Well," he said, friendly as a winter sun. "The noise and I signed different contracts." Whoopi lifted a hand, palm out, a nonverbal hold. "We like complete sentences at the table," she said, smiling. "Harry, do you want to clarify what you meant?" Harry adjusted his cuff. "Only that listening is admirable," he said, voice crisp. "But there's a difference between listening and hiding behind poetry when people were actually heard." A pressure drop. You could feel it in the soles of your feet. Johnny sat back a fraction, the exact measure of a man choosing a road. When he spoke, his tone stayed velvet. "If you've got a ledger, best put it on the table," he said. We're among friends and cameras. Joy attempted an air pocket. We are friends and cameras, truly America in 2 words. Laughter that sounded like a safety rail. Let's stay with the work for a tick, because Harry wasn't done. Work matters, he said, and it did not sound like a compliment. So does the life around it. Some of us had to discover what it means when the brand becomes bigger than the person. Johnny tilted his head, eyes bright behind glass. Some of us had to discover that long before social media learned how to aim, he answered. We can trade memoir titles if you like. Whoopi's smile thinned. Gentle Shaw, this table survives on gentle. Sunny tried to reset, voice warm. We invited you both because our viewers are interested in how public men rebuild. Johnny, what does rebuilding look like to you day-to-day off the set? Quiet, Johnny said. A lot of quiet and apologizing when the echo of you walks in before you do. That landed the way good lines do, like they'd been waiting for someone to say them. The audience applauded. Joy exhaled, but Harry leaned toward his mic like a swimmer sighting a wave. Is the apology for you? He asked, for the cameras. Because rebuilds that come with global press tours look suspiciously like brand maintenance. Joy shot him a look. Prince Harry, Duke of not helping me right now. Whoopi's shoulder set. We don't need sharp for breakfast, she warned. But Harry's jaw was a hinge under strain. Johnny's answer carried that private grin again. If I were maintaining a brand, he said, I'd have shaved the last 10 years off my biography. Didn't find the button for that. Laughter. Are grateful. Harry didn't smile. Some people's mistakes aren't optional reading, he said. Women live with the footnotes. A flutter went through the audience. Johnny's eyes cooled a measurable degree. His voice stayed soft. Careful where you aim that plural, he said. History is a crowded room, and none of us came alone. Joy jumped in with the agility of a veteran floor captain. Speaking of rooms, a lot of us watched that room with the microphones and the wood paneling. She wiggled her fingers toward the ceiling cameras, and we promised ourselves we wouldn't spend this hour litigating in the court of daytime TV. Johnny's gaze flicked to her gratefully, then back to neutral. But the topic had skated out onto the ice and refused to come back. Sarah, ever direct, chose the honest road. Johnny, as she said, kind but clear. That very public courtroom chapter without reliving it. How did it shape the way you walk into rooms like this? Lighter, he said after a beat. Stranger too. People either hug you or decide you're their villain. I keep a spare hug and a spare villain in my pocket so no one goes home empty-handed. That coaxed real laughter. He had disarmed a live wire with a joke and a sidestep. Harry's patience frayed visibly. Jokes make good cover, he said. But to some of us, it didn't feel like a punchline. Whoopi set her mug down with a small click that read louder than any shout. We're not punching, she said. We're talking. Difference matters. Johnny's voice, when it came, lost the smile but kept the calm. I've made and unmade more rooms than I deserve, he said. But I don't take lectures on harm from a man who's never paid rent to anonymity. The audience oh-oh'd. Even Joy couldn't help the micro smirk. Harry's chin lifted a centimeter. Anonymity isn't a virtue, he said. Inattention isn't absolution. Nor is inheritance a resume, Johnny replied, velveteen turning to velvet rope. Yet here we are, 2 men accused of being made by machines they didn't design. Maybe extend a little grace across the aisle. Whoopi's eyes said thank you, and don't push it in the same look. Let me thread this needle. She offered, palms out. Johnny says walking through fire doesn't make you a firefighter. Harry says being seen doesn't mean you were heard. Can we agree the culture is bad at separating the human from the headline? Harry breathed through his nose, then nodded once, a diplomatic concession. The culture loves collapse, he said. But sometimes collapse has collateral. It's not just spectacle. Sunny leaned toward him, supportive. And you've spoken about that collateral. Mental health, security. Harry seized the rope. Exactly. Some of us didn't choose the circus. We were born into it. Then we had to watch people treat our pain like popcorn. He didn't say Johnny's name, but he didn't have to. The camera found Johnny's face, composed a degree north of cool. His answer arrived with surgeon steadiness. And some of us learned that pain isn't improved by a louder microphone, he said, only by the dignity of listening, which I recommend your highness. The honorific pulsed like a bass note. Joy's eyebrows rose into the next segment. The audience vibrated between messy and must-see. Sarah inhaled. Whoopi exhaled. The studio hung on the metronome of 2 lungs. Harry's retort slid out, polished and cutting. I suppose people listen when there's nothing left to watch, he said. Age tends to quiet a career. There it was, the first true slice. A ripple of who boys skated along the front row. Johnny didn't blink. Age, he said, is the only honest critic we'll ever meet. He gives you fewer lines and better taste. Or fewer offers, Harry said, smile thin as wire. Joy threw a flag the size of the studio. All right, penalty on the play, she sang, cheerful and iron. We're not doing cheap shots about birthdays. I had one last week. It was delightful, and I will not be shamed. Laughter, a breath everyone needed. Johnny used it. If we're trading careers, I'll borrow yours for a week, he told Joy. Give these knees a rest. Please, Joyce said, fanning herself. We pay in coffee and opinions. You'd hate it. Whoopi pivoted hard to purpose. Let's ground this, she said. John, may I call you John? You've got a project that puts young musicians on stage without the industry circus. Harry, you've got veterans' mental health initiatives, different lanes, similar motive. Putting someone else in the center. Talk to each other about that. It was the most Whoopi thing to do. Who hand them a bridge and ask them to meet in the middle. Johnny turned first. I'm fond of hands that haven't yet learned how to tremble, he said. You give a kid a stage and a promise that the applause isn't rent. You can fix a piece of the world. Harry nodded, cautiously appreciative. Service is the point, he said. When I stopped mistaking duty for obedience, I could see the person in front of me instead of the institution around them. The audience hummed their approval for a heartbeat. The view was the truce. Then Joy, because it's her job, asked a question that touched the wire again. Johnny, you mentioned not controlling the volume knob. Do you wish you'd lowered it earlier in that how to phrase this very televised chapter of your life? Harry's eyes sharpened, prey scenting the return of a hunted narrative. Johnny invited a small, tired smile to his mouth. If I could have lowered it, he said, I wouldn't have been in that room. But yes, I wish fewer people learned my name in court than in a cinema. It was humble, almost tender. The audience warmed to it immediately. Harry's voice arrived a beat later, clipped. And yet you courted cameras when it served you, he said. Whoopi's head snapped. Nope, she said, firmly maternal. We are not ascribing motives we cannot prove. Johnny's gentleness retreated a step, but his words stayed precise. Motives are for diaries and juries, he said. I'll stick to sentences. Harry angled toward him, the smile returning. Cool, patrician. Sentences can dodge, he murmured. And titles can crowd, Johnny replied. The applause that followed wasn't approval so much as appreciation for a duel well struck. Joy raised her palms again. We're going to pause, she announced, turning to camera 2 with the ease of long practice. When we come back, we're going to talk about rebuilding. What that looks like when the internet thinks it owns your bone. The music cue floated in smooth as a lie. Johnny sat back, letting the lights wash his face. Harry rolled his shoulders like a boxer, not yet convinced he had chosen the right weight class. Whoopi whispered something only Joy could hear. Joy's laugh was a sparkler in a dark room. And when the show came back from commercial, the spark that started with a sideways sentence would meet dry tinder neither man had planned to bring. The applause had barely faded when the cameras came back live. Joy Behar, ever the veteran juggler, smiled with the forced brightness of someone holding 2 fireworks that refused to burn out. Welcome back to the view where the coffee's hot and the conversation's hotter, she quipped, her eyes flicking from Johnny Depp's still figure to Prince Harry's rigid jawline. The audience chuckled obediently, but everyone could feel it. The tension hadn't cooled during the commercial break. If anything, it had steeped. Whoopi Goldberg tried to ground the segment with her velvet voice. We're talking about rebuilding lives under the world's eye. Johnny, you've said before that art saved you. Harry, you've said service saved you. Maybe both of you can tell our viewers. What's the difference between salvation and survival? Johnny leaned forward, his fingers tapping the table once softly. His voice was calm, but carried weight. Survival is a reflex. It's animal. Salvation's different. Salvation's when you choose to keep your hands open even after the fire's burned you. Art gives me that choice every day. The audience clapped. It was the kind of line that made you sit up a little taller. But Harry wasn't impressed. He leaned back in his chair, his expression sharpening into a smirk. That's a beautiful metaphor, he said, voice dripping with condescension. But some of us don't have the luxury of hiding behind guitars and paintbrushes. Some of us were born into responsibility. Real duty, not costumes and cameras. The crowd gasped. Joy visibly winced. Okay, let's but Johnny raised a hand gently like a conductor requesting silence. His expression was almost amused, though his eyes were colder than before. You're right, he said smoothly. You were born into duty, And yet here you are sitting on a daytime talk show, telling the world how unfair your palace was. The audience oohed like a middle school cafeteria, witnessing a roast. Whoopi's hand went to her forehead. Harry's jaw tightened. I left because I chose authenticity over tradition, he said sharply. I didn't want my family defined by silence, by outdated rules, by the weight of a crown that crushes more than it uplifts. I wanted freedom for myself, my wife, my children. Something you clearly never learned because you are still chained to the scandals of your own making. The line landed heavy. The Amber Heard trial was suddenly in the room like a ghost nobody wanted to name, but everybody recognized. The audience went deathly quiet, waiting for Johnny's reaction. Johnny's smile vanished. He sat forward, the glint of his rings catching the studio lights. His tone sharpened, velvet becoming steel. You've got some gall lecturing me about scandal, he said evenly. At least my mistakes are mine. I paid for them, lived through them, stood in the fire for them in him. You, his eyes narrowed. You've built your whole persona on the fame of a family you couldn't wait to tear down. You're not free, lad. You're adrift. The crown gave you a compass, and you snapped it in half because it pointed somewhere you didn't like. Now you wander from studio to studio calling it freedom. That's not liberation. That's running. The words hit like cannon fire. A few audience members clapped instinctively before stopping themselves, unsure if applause was appropriate. Joy tried to steer. All right, let's not go to war before lunchtime. But Harry leaned in, his face red now, his composure slipping. Running, he shot back. I didn't run. I chose. I chose my wife, my children, my sanity. I chose to leave a toxic environment. I'd rather be adrift than rotting in a prison of outdated tradition. And as for you, he gestured at Johnny with a sharp flick of his hand. You're just a man past his prime, clinging to the scraps of a career that used to mean something. The world's moved on, Johnny. Maybe you should too. Gasps rippled across the room. Joy muttered, "Oh boy," under her breath while raised both hands like a referee about to call the match. Okay, time out. But Johnny wasn't done. His voice dropped low and lethal. Every syllable deliberate. The world moves on from everyone, kid. It'll move on from me, and it'll move on from you. The difference is when they move on from me, they'll still have films, characters, music, a body of work that meant something to someone. When they move on from you, he let the silence stretch, savoring it. They'll remember you as the spare who quit. A man who thought walking away from his bloodline made him interesting. Without that crown, you're not a rebel. You're a headline. And headlines fade faster than ink. The audience erupted. Half gasps, half applause, half stunned silence. Joyce slapped the table. Oh my God, we're supposed to be talking about mental health resources. Whoopi leaned in trying to calm the storm. Gentlemen, look. This isn't Parliament. This isn't a courtroom. We're here to talk about rebuilding, not tearing each other down. But Harry's composure cracked. His eyes were glassy now, his chest heaving as he forced the words out. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you're wise with your little riddles and your scarves. But you're nothing more than a broken man who hides behind eyeliner and leather jackets. You're a relic. You don't scare me. You don't impress me. Johnny's reply was sharp, merciless. And you don't fool me. You're not brave. You're not noble. You're not free. You're a boy who traded one stage for another and still hasn't realized the world's only clapping because of your last name. That broke something. Harry slammed his palm on the table, startling the hosts and the audience alike. I don't have to sit here and be insulted like this. He barked. He yanked the microphone off his collar, the sharp crack of static filling the studio. Joyce shot to her feet, hands out. No, don't walk, Harry. Oh, come on. But it was too late. Prince Harry stood, straightened his jacket with a violent tug, and stormed off the stage. The audience was a cocktail of gasps, murmurs, and frantic whispers. The camera tried to follow him, catching only the back of his head as he vanished behind the curtain. Johnny remained in his seat, calm as a statue now, his expression unreadable. He reached for the mug in front of him, took a slow sip, and muttered into the microphone. Guess the view got a little too real today. The line broke the tension. The audience erupted in nervous laughter and applause. Some cheering, some booing, everyone buzzing like bees in a kicked hive. Whoopi exhaled loudly, half into her mic. Well, that was a segment. Joy blinked hard, trying to force the show back on its rails. We'll be right back after this break, folks. Don't go anywhere. We still have a cooking demo and hopefully fewer fireworks. The music swelled, the camera panned wide, and the screen cut to commercial, leaving millions of viewers in stunned disbelief at what they had just witnessed. But what do you think? Did Johnny go too far with his sharp comebacks? Or was Harry out of line with his arrogant jabs? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take on this explosive showdown. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, click subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another wild celebrity meltdown or legendary live TV moment. Until next time, stay tuned because daytime television just keeps getting hotter.